I'm John Heilemann.
And I'm Mark Halperin. With all due respect to the Democrats gathered here to debate, don't forget, there is one big wild card. Welcome to Las Vegas, site of tomorrow night's Democratic presidential debate. On this show tonight, Trey Gowdy's trauma and the DNC's family drama. But first, Obama. In an interview with 60 Minutes that aired Sunday, the president was asked about Hillary Clinton's unusual email practices. He offered a few words of defense for his former Secretary of State. He said the issue is being politicized, that there's no sign of a national security breach into her system. But overall, the president's defense of his former Secretary of State was notably lacking.
She made a mistake. She's acknowledged it. I do think that the way it's been ginned up is in part because of politics, and I think she'd be the first to acknowledge that maybe she could have handled the original decision better and the disclosures more quickly. It is important for her to answer these questions.
Well, that's kind of stunning. Did the president leave the woman who wants to succeed him hanging out to dry on this issue? And if so, why so?
Well, we call that in the political parlance minimal cover, right? The worst thing she could have done, jeopardize national security. The president said she didn't do that. He also takes a shot at Republicans. On every other way, hung out to dry. And why? Because he's pissed. The president, according to every source that you and I ever talked to in the White House, is furious over the thing that she did with her email. He feels as though she violated the spirit and letter of the law within his administration, and he's still angry about it, and he can't help but let that show.
You know, there were so many ways he could have answered that question that would have been better for her, that would have had no political cost. Interesting to me is he said no national security breach, as if he's been briefed on the FBI investigation.
Yes.
That could be great news for her, because I still think right now her greatest vulnerability is if the FBI comes back and says there was a national security problem. If the president was tipping his hand that he knows that investigation will show that, although the interview itself was bad news for her, it'd be good news longer term.
I find it hard to believe that President Obama would say that on 60 Minutes in that forum, knowing the question was coming, if he didn't know that he was not going to come back to haunt him later. Now, again, we never know. But I feel like you're right. In the long run, he covered her on the biggest vulnerability, but on really nothing else.
If Biden gets in the race, though, it also, to me, if I were Hillary Clinton, be worried that this shows that the president is not going to play favorites in her direction. He may well favor Biden.
Yeah, he definitely not right now on Team Clinton. Okay. A recently fired investigator of the House Benghazi Committee is accusing the Republican-led panel of focusing more on bringing down Hillary Clinton than on uncovering what went wrong in Libya 3 years ago. Today, the New York Times took a close look at whether politics was, in fact, playing a role in the committee's work. Mark, ever since Kevin McCarthy's now infamous comments about this committee, the committee has been on its heels and under attack. How much worse politically does this make things for the chairman Gowdy and his committee?
The staffer who left the committee is making an accusation about the committee attacking Hillary Clinton with no backup. He's got no documentation that's come forward. I think Hillary Clinton has gotten a huge ride in the press because of that. The more dangerous thing for the committee is basically they failed to do what they should have done, which is once the emails came out, they should have given that to a different committee. The Benghazi investigation now intertwined with the email thing, given what McCarthy said. Unless Hillary Clinton just completely messes up when she testifies next week, she is over this.
Totally agree. You know, that piece of that information, the New York Times story is very interesting. First, on the point you mentioned, the notion that Gowdy wanted to get rid of this element of the committee. Second, just the number, the stuff that the Times does have in there about the number of witnesses they wanted to call but they haven't gotten to, the way in which the probe seemed to shift. Now, you could argue that was okay, it was legitimate for the probe to shift, but some of the behavior that's described in that story, talking about Glocks and gun clubs, if those things are true, it's also the kind of juicy stuff that makes these people not seem serious, and that just helps Hillary Clinton.
They can have a gun club, that's fine. Look, the problem is
Glocks in the committee room is not
Hillary Clinton has more debate, more email problems coming. But if the committee is fouled beyond redemption, if the president tipped his hand and said the FBI is not going to find national security problems,
it's over.
She is over. She's over a lot of the current hurdles.
Politically, it's over.
Not every one.
Pretty much.
Because there's more coming in terms of emails, but she's over a lot. All right. On the other side of the aisle, the Democratic National Committee is also dealing with a defensive posture after a New York Times report of its own today about the DNC. The newspaper reported that an aide to the committee chairwoman, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, supposedly, quote, disinvited the DNC vice chair, Tulsi Gabbard, to the debate tomorrow night here after the Hawaii congresswoman spoke out very publicly against the party's decision to limit the number of Democratic nomination debates to just 6. The DNC says this is all just a big misunderstanding. John, is this fueling those who say the DNC is stacking the deck in favor of Hillary Clinton? Is the DNC doing that? And is any of this going to matter? Is the DNC going to get away with it?
Fueling it, yes, and I don't know. There's no doubt the people who think the DNC is engaging in a protection racket for Hillary Clinton here, and it's not the DNC. Let's be clear. Congressman Wasserman Schultz, the chairwoman, made this decision on 6 debates unilaterally. Unilaterally. She didn't consult Tulsi Gabbard. She didn't consult other vice chairs. She did this on her own. Tulsi Gabbard is not the only member of the DNC who is unhappy about it. The criticism of Wasserman Schultz in the party, I think, is getting very intense. She might be able to get away with it, might not, as we saw in Iowa and New Hampshire. It's not like there's a big clamor among a lot of Democratic voters for more debates, but it sure looks, smells, feels, seems stinky.
In my career, I cannot think of another more obvious abuse of power by a national chair of either party. And although Martin O'Malley is raising it, Bernie Sanders is raising it, it does look like they'll get away with it. It is a disgrace, and Debbie Wasserman Schultz is facing some public heat. Yeah. And she's just going to sit and take it. You know,
the DNC's explanation of this is, we didn't disinvite her, but they admit that they called her, actually, again, to be clear, Wasserman Schultz as chief of staff, not someone at the DNC, someone working for Debbie Wasserman Schultz individually, called Tulsi Gabbard and basically said, listen, if you're going to keep saying that stuff, maybe you better stay away from Vegas. Maybe you should not go. It'd be better if you stayed away. That might not be a disinvitation because it's America. She can fly here anytime she wants. But it's bad, bad, bad.
Yep, I agree.
All right. Congress is on holiday break. But Paul Ryan, he's working overtime, trying to decide whether he's going to cave in to all that pressure he's facing from those who want him to become the next Speaker of the House. Mark, you wrote a brilliant, unmatched, extraordinary story on BloombergPolitics.com. That's up there right now, that pulls back the curtain on Ryan's deliberations, also some on Biden's deliberations. We're focusing on Ryan right now. We're here in Vegas. What are the odds that Paul Ryan ends up in that speaker's chair?
I'm going with 50-50. Yeah. Look, there's no one emerging. There are other names that are being floated, but almost everyone whose name is floated now says, look, if Ryan does it, I won't do it. It's going to be hard during the recess for anyone else to get momentum. Ryan doesn't want the job. He's asking for the job to be structured in a way that's going to be very difficult to do. But until he says no, I don't think anybody else can emerge. My gut says in the end, the guy's not going to take a job he doesn't want.
Yeah. My gut has said, as you'll recall, Thursday I said Paul Ryan will be Speaker of the House. Friday I said Paul Ryan will be Speaker of the House. Today I'm still saying Paul Ryan will be Speaker of the House. I think that we see people take jobs all the time they don't want. He's under all this pressure.
Who's taking a job like this they don't want? Name somebody who's taking a job like this.
He cares about the party.
You made an assertion. Name someone who's taking a job like this that they didn't want.
My Uncle Elmo took a job, not quite like this, but a different kind of job.
This job would ruin his personal life and maybe his professional life.
And then if he doesn't take it, he's being told by everyone around him that it's going to consign the party to disarray and chaos. He cares about the party. He cares about policy.
As I reported, Ryan thinks a caretaker speaker is a bad idea. Yeah. Most people do. We're going to get a de facto caretaker, not someone who says, I'm only going to serve 2 years, but it's basically going to be someone who just keeps things going. And McCarthy, who wanted to be Speaker, is going to basically be running the place with a figurehead speaker. It's going to be a fair amount like what happened with Denny Hastert.
You gave me 50-50 before. Now you're saying, oh, this is what's going to happen. I'm telling you, in the end, he's a believer in his party. He's a believer in its ideas. He doesn't want to see the party fall apart. I think he's going to end up there. He's going to get talked into some kind of structural changes that'll never work out. He'll regret it in the end.
Whole thing's unpredictable.
All right, coming up, my interview with one of the founders, the co-founders of Black Lives Matter, and the one question she would ask if she were a moderator at tomorrow night's debate here in Vegas. And then we go where no man has gone before, our voyage to the first ever Politicon convention in LA. All of that after this. This past weekend, I made a foray back to my hometown, Los Angeles, for the inaugural Politicon convention. More on that in a minute. But first, while I was out there, I had a chance to sit down with Patrisse Cullorson, a California-based activist who helped found the movement Black Lives Matter. I asked her what she hopes to achieve between now and the end of the 2016 election.
think we need presidential candidates that are going to speak specifically to issues of state violence, so policing. But we also need a candidate that's going to speak specifically to mass incarceration inside of this country. And that looks like repealing the war on drugs. That looks like repealing the war on gangs. That looks like deep reinvestment into poor communities, black communities in particular. It looks like our movement not just challenging presidential candidates, but also local elected officials.
The incarceration piece and the militarization of police, those issues to do with the criminal justice system. Then there's this economic piece, right?
Yes.
Which is obviously a larger, more systemic, more sweeping kind of agenda. Do you want to try to focus, at least again in the short term, on the incarceration and police issues? Is that like a higher priority, or are these all, in your view, equally high priorities?
I think they're equally high priorities, but what I would say is the contradiction that faces black people the most in this moment in history is policing and imprisonment, because that actually has everything to do with why many black folks are unemployed. When you are a convicted felon and you come home and you try to interview for a job, the first thing they ask on an application is, have you ever been convicted of a felony? And that automatically disqualifies you from your ability to feed your family. And so we have to look at the system that is allowing for a cycle of joblessness and homelessness in our communities.
So Black Lives Matter's had two kind of now pretty well reported interactions with Secretary Clinton, right? One was in New Hampshire. Some of that got captured on video.
Yes.
We'll talk about that in a second. And then one where you guys had a meeting with, not you personally, but where the movement, the group had a meeting with her just on a couple days ago, on Friday. In that first interaction, she's captured on film saying this thing about how she doesn't believe that you change hearts. I believe you change laws, you change allocation of resources, you change the way systems operate. It seems to me that that kind of systemic, structural approach is something you guys would find positive, that you'd be amenable to. She got criticized by some BLM people for the way she handled that interaction, but that, again, focusing on that big structural thing, actual tangible change, would seem to me to be the kind of thing you guys would want to hear from her, as opposed to a commitment to kind of airy-fairy notions of racial justice and equality that people have been saying for a long time.
Yes, I mean, the interaction, I think, between, Hillary Clinton and our members was an interaction that I think she said the things that she believed, but I think we also wanted to hear her be accountable for the role she's played in producing a system that has locked 1 million black people inside cages inside the U.S.
Right. So there's obviously a history with President Clinton, and again, we'll talk about him in a second, but with President Clinton and the policies that his administration pursued and enacted, right? But when you mention her and her accountability, her personal accountability, what do you mean when you say she has to take accountability for her past actions? What do you specifically keying in on there?
There's a moment in Bill Clinton's administration where Hillary lobbied around punitive laws that impacted black communities pretty detrimentally. And she lobbied around more policing, and she lobbied to really push for the war on drugs. And so we see this a lot with first ladies. Of course, they lobby in support of their husband. And so she's played that role, and she is not admitting to that. And we think that the Clinton administration was sort of seen as the administration that helped black people. But if you look at the concrete policies, it was a Clinton administration that paved the way for the end of the social welfare state and the end to any black folks' ability to not be completely criminalized.
Do you think that in your view, she still has not taken responsibility for that at this point? She's not gone far enough to your mind to accept that responsibility, that accountability?
I think it's less about if she's gone far enough and more about if she gets into office, will she commit concretely to those changes. I think she can say everything she wants right now. She's a candidate. But that moment she gets into office, we want to see concrete change.
Right. The meeting that took place on Friday, do you feel as though the one that took place in Washington, again, reported pretty widely, but in some detail, but not that much, do you feel like from what you know about, I know you weren't there because you've been in California on this caravan across the state, do you feel like that meeting was a step in the right direction?
Yeah, I think any meeting with a candidate that's pressuring them around a certain agenda is an important next step.
Right. But you mentioned President Clinton. I mentioned President Clinton. You know, famously, Toni Morrison said that he was the first black president.
Yeah.
In a particular context, and kind of on the tail end of the impeachment drama. You know, that was 1998, 1999. It's now a lot of years later. How do you think that in the light of history and perspective, when you read that, Toni Morrison, obviously an esteemed author, person of greatly respected within the African American community, do you think that statement looks now kind of ridiculous?
You know, I respect Toni Morrison so much, but I do think that was a mistake. I think when we say that anyone that's not black is the new black something, it's a mistake, and especially the role that the administration played in just traumatizing black lives.
So you guys at Black Lives Matter also had some interactions with Senator Sanders, right?
Multiple, yes.
Famously, there was this disruption that took place, I think, in Seattle in the summer. That was one of the things that prompted you to write your op-ed.
Yeah.
How do you feel the conversation has gone with Senator Sanders since that disruptive moment? He's met with the group and talked to you guys. How do you feel about how that has gone?
I think it's been fine. I think these candidates are going to have to get used to disruption. I think they're going to have to get used to meeting with the movement. They're going to have to get used to meeting with different black folks across the country. But I think for us, ultimately, we are trying to use this moment to have a national conversation about black lives, and this is the perfect opportunity, right?
So for interest groups that are trying to achieve tangible change in the course of an election, they only do it through a mix of carrots and sticks, right? The carrot is, you know, if you listen to us and you talk to us and we have a constructive conversation, you might be able to win some more of our votes. The stick is, if you don't, we'll punish you in some way electorally. So I understand what the carrot is, and you guys have been engaged with the candidates, offering them access to the movement and to the broader constellation of African American votes. But what's the stick? What happens to these candidates if they don't engage with you and if they don't take you seriously? What penalty will they pay, and how will you guys try to impose that penalty?
I mean, we don't see our movement ending anytime soon. So whoever gets into office will have to be dealing with us for the duration of time that they're in office. So I think part of the stick is a developing movement and a growing movement. As we saw with Obama's campaign, he received the vote of young folks in particular. We have that to our advantage. We also have this to our advantage, an Obama administration that in large part didn't really protect or uplift the black community. So you have a lot of black folks who voted for Obama who are disappointed, and they aren't interested in sort of like this person who's going to say they're going to change everything and they don't change anything for black people. So we have a lot of black people on our side that are trying to figure out, who do I vote for and do I even vote?
On Tuesday, there's a Democratic debate. It's the first one in Las Vegas. Let me ask you two questions about it. The first is, what are you looking for? What are you going to be, when you're watching that debate, what are you going to be paying attention? What do you want to hear from these candidates, the five who will be up there on stage, not just Secretary Clinton and Senator Sanders, but also Lincoln Chafee, Martin O'Malley, Jim Webb?
I want to hear them talk about Black Lives Matter, but specifically I want to hear them talk about an economic platform that's about talking about how incarceration has impacted black communities and how policing has impacted black communities. I want to hear them save black people and act unapologetically and say that this country needs to do a better job at serving black people. I want to hear them talk about black trans folks who've been dying at the hands of vigilantes, essentially. I want to hear all the candidates say that they have a commitment to being engaged with the current movement.
Let me ask you one last question and I'll let you go. If I gave you a spot as a moderator in that debate for one question, and you could ask the candidates one question for them to all respond to, what would that question be?
If they could have a moment to make a commitment to decarcerating and depolicing forces, would they actually do that here in this country?
Our thanks to Patrisse Cullorson for taking the time. Up next, guess who we got to wear a Donald Trump mask?
This past weekend, John and company went to LA for Politicon. There were debates, some big stars, and a few fireworks. Also a fair amount of nerding out. We sent our resident filmmaker, Griffin Hammond, and our resident troublemaker, Matt Negrin, to check it out, and ended up going native.
Good to see you. Welcome to Politicon. I'm John Adams of Massachusetts.
Not really a fan of the people dressing up as politicians.
I'm James Madison, the colony sweetheart.
Dirty old Ben. That's what they call me.
Politicon is a Comic-Con style event for politics and pop culture. Anybody that dresses up in political cosplay gets in free.
Wait, I can get in for free if I dress up? I'll be right back. Well, Newt Gingrich is here today, so I think I'll probably meet him. It'll be, All right, you want to practice? Because I have a Newt Gingrich mask. Looks like the Botox that you've had recently has probably taken such a toll that you
personal attacks are really in poor taste play. I just don't see the need for that
That's
sort of
the way
stuff.
politics works nowadays.
I've been carrying this around everywhere to remind people of... Do you have your own copy?
I do have my own copy.
Speaker Gingrich, I have your 1994 contract with America. Will you sign it for me real quick?
Newt wouldn't sign the book, so I got to do it myself. Well, Congresswoman Bachmann, you recognize me?
Of course I do.
I look at today's Republican Party. I don't know if I fit in. Win me back.
Listen, the Republican Party could only be so lucky to have you back. What you did.
You've had an extraordinary post-presidency. Everybody loves you. They're naming things after you. Ta-da!
Hello! It was Doris Kearns Goodwin the whole time!
Hanging out at Politicon.
Loving every moment of it.
So who's under the Donald Trump mask? Let's see, who is it?
It would be me.
Oh, wow!
Hi, Donald. It's good to see you again.
An important question, would you be my running mate?
Well, of course I will. Yeah, absolutely.
We're gonna go get Newt!
Sir, hello. I have your original 1994 contract with America. Would you mind signing it? Thank you so much. Oh, open the right here would be perfect. I got it. We'll make a pact.
Okay, I want to be Lincoln next time.
Favorite president,
and
right?
And you can be FDR.
I'll be FDR if you're Lincoln.
It's a deal, okay?
Simon, I did it. I did the cosplay.
You did it. You get in free. Well done.
Donald, awesome. As usual. Huge.
We did it.
And we'll be right back.
We love Vegas, and we're back here, of course, tomorrow for a special 1 hour, with all due respect, live from the Wynn Hotel. We'll be previewing the Democratic debate with a whole huge, smoking hot bevy of special guests.
Like Vegas, we're always live 24/7 on BloombergPolitics.com on twice a day. We'll see you tomorrow from Vegas. Sayonara.